Well, once again, brothers and sisters, it's good to be with you. Just thought that might be a good thing, as we begin to reflect on the gospel today, to remember two important events that occurred on this date. And August the 6th, 1945, history shows that the atomic bomb was dropped on the people of Hiroshima, and several days later in Nagasaki in Japan. And we pray that we may always work that that kind of destruction may never happen again, that we may always look for ways in which our misunderstandings can be turned into ways in which we recognize each other as sisters and brothers. And the second important event that took place on this date was in 1978. It was the day that our Holy Father, Pope Paul VI, passed. And we know that since then, he has been formally canonized a saint. And we can be ever grateful to the Lord for providing such a strong pastor, addressing in such unquestionable ways the support of the beauty of marriage and the sacredness of human life. So I'm going to tell you that one of the things that that's a part of my weekly schedule is 3 days a week. I have to go for physical therapy, 2 hours each of those 3 days. And Father Rector every single day will say to me when I'm going for physical therapy, remember, no pain, no gain. And he's absolutely right. And I'm so grateful for the team of therapists, but the head therapist, Julie, is not only good at her art, the art of physical therapy. She is a wonderful, wonderful mother of 3 kids. And so yesterday when I went for physical therapy, I said, well, Joel, how you doing today? And she said, oh boy, I'll tell you what, I'm so tired. She said, my daughter, and her daughter's 2 years old, she said, normally she's a really good sleeper. But she said she woke me up at 1:30 in the morning, and she needed me to be with her. And so she said for an hour and a half until she was able to fall back asleep, I was with her. And so I'm really tired today. And I was thinking about, that's an experience that all of us can have, reflecting about where we were as children. Times when we were having a nightmare or we were sick. And that we knew that we could call out for our moms and dads and they would be there to comfort us. Or we can remember times in our adult lives when we were filled with discouragement or filled with fear. And there was somebody who was there to reassure us, to make sure that we knew that we were not alone. And those experiences can help us understand exactly what happened on Mount Tabor when Jesus invited Peter, James, and John to go up with him on that mountain. But I think we need to step back for a moment and think about what happened right before they went up on that mountain. You remember it well. It's the story of what happened at Caesarea Philippi. And Jesus poses the question and says, okay, tell me, who do people say that I am? And, the apostles started responding. Some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah. And then Jesus said, but who do you say that I am? And Peter comes forth with a profession of faith and said, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And that was beautiful and reassuring to Jesus. But what followed right after that had him discouraged and had the apostles fearful. You remember that part of the story too? When Jesus begins to share with them what's going to happen to him, that he's going to have to suffer and die. And Peter says, no way. That is not going to happen. We're not going to allow that to happen. And Jesus really reprimands Peter at that point and said, stop standing in the way of my Father. But Jesus at that moment needed encouragement. Because after all that he was doing with the apostles, the time that he spent with them, he's now seeing that they're not getting it. And he's feeling very much alone in his ministry. And as he knows to go up to that mountain, and the mountain in the scriptures is always signifying the place of coming close to God the Father, he invited Peter, James, and John to go with him because they probably more than the rest of the 12 were kind of shaken by that encounter in Caesarea Philippi. And what we know happened on that mountain was a transfiguration. it was a transformation moment. Yep, for Jesus first, because once again, as the voice from the Father spoke at the time of his baptism, and when maybe Jesus needed it the most, he heard those words again. This is my beloved Son. You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And it was in the earshot of Peter, James, and John. But that voice, the voice of the Father, was followed by Jesus coming to them and say, okay, guys, stand up. Don't be afraid. Let's move forward. Well, that moment on Mount Tabor is replicated so many times over and over and over and over again in our lives. Just as the Father was real to Jesus on that mountain, just as Jesus was real with the apostles on that mountain, the same thing does in fact happen in our lives. And we've got to remember that and be convinced of it and allow it to happen. Sometimes, like Peter, James, and John, we get so wrapped up in our fears that we become paralyzed. Or we become so discouraged that maybe we're tempted to think that there isn't any hope. But guaranteed, God is always with us. Jesus always accompanies us. And so, as I said at the beginning of this Mass, if there's something that's troubling your heart today, if you have a burden on your back that is way too heavy, take some time today to sit quietly with the Lord, and he will give you peace. And the way that he sometimes gives us peace is through others. And so maybe somewhere along the line today, as we're attentive to what in fact are our struggles, then it might be a good idea to turn to somebody that we know that we could talk to. Because the Lord will use them to give us a sense of comfort. And at the same time, what we experience is something that we can then be God's instruments to share with others, to help them in their discouragement and in their fear. So today, we got to be grateful for the lessons that we learn from the Lord. They are so close to our human experiences. They become so real that we recognize that what happened in history on that Mount of Tabor continues to happen every single day. All that we need to do is to do what Jesus did, to do what Peter, James, and John did, to go up on that mountain, to go closer to the Lord and wait for his voice. And if we're faithful enough to do that, I'm pretty sure that you and I will hear God say to us, you are my beloved daughter. You are my beloved son. In you I am well pleased. With you I am always.